So, welcome to Bloodhound Pix. I am one of your hosts, Craig.
And this is Josh.
And this is Kyle.
Thanks for joining along. So, this is our segment Indie-stry, where this episode we're going to be talking about pitching and a thing that kind of almost plays a bigger part sometimes than the actual script itself, it feels like. But we're going to kind of talk about the importance of it, and from our perspective and from kind of what we learned, and moving forward. So the three of us, we kind of had to do pitching in itself. The whole thing is that for the most part, even when you're moving forward, when you're getting hired for a writing job, a lot of the times you may not have it written because you should get paid to have it written. Of course, this isn't talking about spec scripts that you're using for submission and you write, beforehand and you're trying to pitch. But just talking about in general, you'll go and kind of maybe you'll have a treatment, you'll have an outline, you'll have all the stuff, and you'll go and kind of present this pitch to, be it producers, studio heads, directors, whoever it is at the time, and try and get them. So there's different types of pitch. You have your elevator pitch, which is it's basically 1 minute. The idea is something, if you're in the elevator with them, you can quickly say it, and it's just concise, it's to the point. The next one is it's your like 5, maybe 10 minutes tops, if that. It's the same one where you want to be concise. You're going to, and I'll get a little bit more into this, you're going to give kind of personal connection to the material, but you're still just almost pitching via just your own voice. Then later on, when you're trying to get, moving forward and you have like a big session, pitches can go from 30 minutes. They can go a long time, where you can start bringing in things like lookbooks, which one of us will kind of go into. Kyle's pretty good with lookbooks, so maybe he'll do it. I just got him to do that anyways. So, where you can have slides up, and that is like where you're really giving the aesthetic and kind of what the actors will look like and stuff like, and it's giving a visual interpretation of the movie itself rather than just your voice. So does anybody want to say anything before I continue on about pitching?
I can elaborate on lookbooks, I guess, since you just brought that up.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, a lookbook is just a PowerPoint or whatever program you would use, kind of visual presentation of the film. But I think they're really fun because it's the beginning of the creative process. So if you have any kind of inkling of directing or how you would direct your script, whether or not that's on the table, you get a chance to start looking at other films that you like the look of or the feel of, or kind of playing around with casting and all the other elements that go in, music, lighting, you name it. So it's a fun kind of first step into making your story into a reality and figuring out how you're going to sell that to other people and make them kind of see the movie before there is a movie that exists.
I think too, it seems like I could be wrong, but it seems like a lot of people, especially now, want to see those. I actually had somebody ask for mine like recently, just assuming that I had one, and I did, thank God. So yeah, it was kind of weird because they didn't know that I did and just assumed that I did. So and they are fun, and it really it's almost the best way to sell what you're selling, because you can really get your your stamp or your vision for what you want to do out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what you'll kind of learn is that as the industry is moving more and more forward, even within the kind of the screenwriting process in itself and how you format a script, there's less and less words, basically. Where you look at a script before, during certain periods, and there's could be long chunks of action scenes, and where now it's saying, well, anything, don't go over 3 lines, and 3 lines is really pushing it. And you could have had before, this is probably a bad example, but things like Josh runs down the hallway, and continue on, where now it could even just be Josh runs. Like, it's starting to get to like very very concise, and that's what a lot of it too, why the lookbook is so great, is because people don't really want to read that stuff. A lot of times they just want to see it and see that and get the feel very quickly, like they both went on. So talking about the pitch in itself, while the elevator pitch, as I described, is just like a minute, I'll go into something that's going to be the middle ground, where it's like the 5 to 10 minutes or so. The importance of I'm going to kind of talk about is that, and it may seem like it's a common knowledge, but it is something that needs to be said and that we've kind of learned over. All 3 of us have had different points throughout where we've been able to pitch, and what you'll learn is that the emotional connection that you have to it sells it almost more than the plot of your script, in a way. I think I'll probably end up backtracking myself throughout as I'm trying to explain this, but like for myself, an example going on that is when I pitch, I won't get into what my actual script is or anything like that. All you really need to know is that there are themes of fatherhood in the script that I'm going to be referencing. So in terms of this 5-minute time period, I spent about 2.5 minutes to 3 talking about giving a buildup of, and this isn't the case for every movie, but for mine, this is kind of how it worked and how it was structured. But it talked about the anxiety of fatherhood before the child is actually born, and dealing with some of the issues that come across your mind, are these classes that are 9 hours long on childbirthing, and 30 minutes total at the beginning of the end say how great having a child is and the beauty of it, and then the other 8.5 hours is this display of like, well, here's all the horrible things that can happen over the course of the next 3 years. And so in that, I would talk about that, and then go into saying, I was fortunate enough that I had my daughter was born, and she was very healthy, and she's great, but I want to talk about it now from somebody who wasn't as lucky. And then I go and kind of explain the plot itself. The reason why this was more important for me is because based on my plot, it is more, as these 2 know, of this script, it is more kind of a character study. It's a family drama. It's body horror as well, but there's family drama. It's like about a character. It's not like as easy to describe as Speed, where there's a bus going at 55 miles an hour. They have to, with a bomb on it, and it can't go under or it's going to explode. And it's not that, like, I guess, complex plot heavy in that sense. I could be wrong, and these 2 could kind of argue against me after I'm done talking, But that's what mainly people want to know. Now, they just want to see that because if they don't think if you're not invested, then why should they care? Is kind of the underlying comment about it. So in terms of pitching, even if you're just reading off of your note cards, if you're nervous, they understand the nervousness, but they just want to know you care. It's kind of the main thing. And yeah, does anybody else have anything to say on that? And then we can kind of get into that caring afterwards too.
Well, I was just going to make the comment of, in terms of the connection thing, I actually bought a pitch session from Stage 32 last week. And what I did was, it was a written pitch, and they kind of give you, I don't know, like a guide as far as, making sure you do it right. And it was funny because the first thing that they have in there is you need to state your personal connection to the story. And it's just funny because, what if you don't have one? So I guess you need to make one up.
Well, that's actually where unless Kyle, you have something you wanted to say, but that's where it's going. What if you don't have a personal connection? But yeah. Kyle, you can go first.
That's a good question. But going off what Craig was saying, though, first, I think his story, and we won't totally go into it, but I think you could boil it down to some kind of a short speed like log line. I think that's part of your work as a writer later, is going, what is most important? Yes, there's subplots and other shit that the screenplay gets into, but what do I need to tell people to like hook them? I think a lot of that stuff you can reverse engineer. We just had we definitely met some people that do it the opposite way and say, no, you have to have the best log line ever before you ever do anything. And if you don't, your screenplay is going to suck, which I think is kind of BS. So, but I feel the same way about the personal connection. It's like, there probably is one. There's probably a reason you're writing what you're writing. Maybe you don't know what it is yet. Maybe you have to figure that out. Maybe you have to refine that. So also don't like sweat it. There's some reason you're doing it. It might not be like tied to, your deep, dark childhood past. It might just be like, hey, I fucking love Godzilla. Okay, what's wrong with that? If you really love it, your passion will come through.
So I agree with Kyle, and that's where we were kind of going. I think of like deciding what's like how much connection to bring into something. Like if you're hired to write a Godzilla movie, that's a good example of like some people when they're teaching pitch classes or stuff like that, they'll say like it has to be this kind of very kind of passionate internal like emotional connection where even if you can get some tears in there, you need to show like even for comedies, stuff like that, where you need to be like, you want to write. You talk about writing Dumb and Dumber, and they want to see I'm writing Dumb and Dumber because, when I was born, I don't know. Somebody called me dumb once, and then you start getting teared up, and you're going on and on and on.
I was going to say if you don't, according to Roger, if you don't cry, he's going to make you cry.
Yeah, I think we proved him wrong.
Yeah.
All three of us.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So that's what you'll hear sometimes, but that's the kind of the discussion that comes up that Kyle was going into. If you're writing a Godzilla movie and you're writing it because like you watched Godzilla when you were a kid and you love Godzilla, and as long as our kind of belief and the belief that we've heard from others is that as long as you're passionate about that, then that's great. It doesn't need to be like, oh, well, I'm writing Godzilla because Godzilla was the only one to get me through this horrible time where these people are beating me constantly, or which is, if that's the case, then I don't know, use it to the extent that you want, because I think some of these pitches sessions too, when they're teaching it, they try to get almost too much emotion out of the person, and so it kind of has that line of like, what are you willing to say in front of these people that you probably don't know? Like, do you want to talk about this horrific, potentially, if it was a horrific thing that happened to your past, and go into full detail? And is that going to, they could love the story, but will that maybe turn them off because of the uncomfortability of it?
And we were obviously witness to way too much emotion from people pitching their shit, where it became distracting. Like, I don't fucking care. What's your story? Like,
Yeah,
stop crying.
I agree. I think that's a delicate line too, because you can cross over into like, are you just trying to guilt trip someone into like buying your script because they're supposed to feel bad for you? You could go too far in that territory. And also, like Josh is saying, like, is the story interesting? Because it's really, I think you need the appropriate amount of like passion, connection, as well as a good script, and maybe vice versa. Or if your script is really good, someone might say, hey, I loved your script. Where did that come from? But, if you start crying and tell them about your life, and then you say, oh, and here's this story I have, and this is, you give them an awful idea, they are not going to buy it.
So, yeah, that is kind of, I think, a discussion. Do you guys have any more? I mean, that's as good as we can say. Like, of course, the story should always be front and center. But, once you start getting into pitching, you have to, people that write, a lot of times they don't want to have to deal with that, but it is where that kind of salesperson issue comes up, where like you have to market yourself in that way that normally none of us that write are really wanting to do or accustomed to. We just want to kind of write and sit out there and think that the work should speak for itself. And I mean, that's the last anything I have to say on it, unless the other two here say something that gets me to think of something else.
Josh, you got anything?
No, I think I don't know. I feel like we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's a good basic overview. And so if you want to know more about pitching, comment, like, subscribe, quit your job. Or if you want us to pitch something, or like break down pitches or whatever, anything.
And for future episodes, what we'd like to say is that we're going to start getting guests that will be able to kind of explain more, and we would love to have your questions to talk to them about it. We're going to have here's just some future topics where we're talking about the film school and if it's worth it or not, and we're going to have somebody that runs a film program at a college in New York, and she also knows both from kind of that producer side, the business side, and from the creative side, and she is very down to earth and a great person to talk to. So we're going to have that. We're also going to have some working screenwriters that are going to talk about the true role of what a screenwriter actually does. And this isn't your Aaron Sorkins or your writer directors, but people that just kind of are hired writers. What is their role within the industry? So we're going to talk about horror conventions and talk with some kind of indie horror actors and filmmakers and all across the board. But yeah, we'd love your questions for any of those topics, and we'll save them and give them out to the people as we're kind of recording them over the next few months. So send us anything you got.
And make sure you quit your job.
Yeah, we're really just trying to get this across to you. Just quit your job.
That's the one thing to take away from this.
The true art of the pitch.
Okay, well, that is a whole nother topic that we could discuss as well.
I mean, that's like that's the end of the rainbow goal we all have. Can I sell a script and quit my job?
Yeah. But with that, so quitting your job, this is Bloodhound Pix. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and we're glad you listened. So, thank you.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is produced by Josh Lee, Craig Draheim, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Audio editing by Kyle Hintz.